North Pacific Ocean, 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii, July 1974. The instruments in the control room of the Hughes Glomar Explorer had been showing steady readings for days. Somewhere below the ship, at the end of 5,400 meters of assembled steel pipe, a Soviet submarine was rising through the dark at a few meters per minute. Then, at 2,000 meters depth, 10,000 feet below the surface, with 2 miles still to go, the numbers changed. A structural member in the capture vehicle fractured. 2 of the gripping sections released. The forward portion of the K129, the section containing the missile compartment, and everything the CIA had spent 4 years and $350 million to reach, separated and fell back into the abyss. In the control room, no one said anything immediately. The instruments told the story. The mission director of Project Azorian, a CIA officer named John Parangosky, had spent the better part of a decade building toward this moment. By most accounts, he simply looked at the data, confirmed what had happened, and began thinking about what could be salvaged. What was left in the claw was approximately 12 meters of the submarine's aft section. They would bring it up anyway. This is not a story about a submarine. It's a story about what people will construct and how deeply they will deceive when the thing they're trying to reach is buried 5 kilometers underwater and the whole world is watching. To understand how the Glomar Explorer came to be in that position, you have to go back 6 years. March 1968. The K129 was a Soviet Gulf second-class ballistic missile submarine assigned to the Pacific Fleet. It carried 3 SSN-4 ballistic missiles fitted with nuclear warheads, 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes, and the cryptographic equipment standard to a vessel of its class. In early 1968, it departed its base on the Kamchatka Peninsula for routine deterrent patrol. 98 men were aboard. On March 8th, the K-129 failed to make its scheduled radio contact. When the second window passed without a transmission, and then the third, the Pacific Fleet Command recognized that something was seriously wrong. The cause of the loss had never been officially established. Soviet and Russian investigators have pointed at various possibilities over the years: an accidental missile fuel ignition, a fire in the torpedo compartment, flooding through a faulty hatch. No definitive account exists. The submarine simply stopped communicating and was never heard from again. The Soviet Navy conducted an extensive search over the following 2 months, deploying surface ships and aircraft across a wide area of the Pacific. They found nothing. The crew was eventually declared lost at sea, and the families were notified in the careful, limited way that the Soviet state notified families of men lost in classified operations. What the Soviets did not know was that the Americans had already located the wreck. A global network of deep-water hydrophone arrays, known as SOSUS, registered the acoustic signature of the implosion, and Navy analysts were able to triangulate its approximate position. American intelligence shared that information with no one. There was no reason to. The USS Halibut, a submarine converted into an intelligence-gathering platform, was sent to look. It carried a towed camera sled hung on 6 kilometers of cable that could be dragged across the ocean floor while the submarine held position above. In the summer of 1968, after weeks of methodical searching at 4,900 meters depth, the photographs came back showing the K-129 broken apart on a sediment plain in the deep Pacific. The imagery showed the hull in 3 major sections. The missile tubes were identifiable. What appeared to be intact warhead assemblies were visible, as well as the cryptographic spaces. A naval intelligence officer reviewing those photographs would have understood at once what was potentially recoverable and what recovering it would mean. The question was not whether the material was valuable, The question was whether anyone could actually get to it. At 4,900 meters, just under 3 miles down, the water pressure is around 490 atmospheres. No human diver can work below about 300 meters, even with specialized equipment. The deep-sea submersibles available in the late 1960s could reach those depths for observation, but nothing had ever been engineered to lift a large, heavy object from that environment. The K129 itself weighed approximately 2,700 tons in its intact state. A lifting mechanism would have to be designed from scratch, deployed once from a ship holding position in open ocean with no anchor, with no means of repair if anything failed at depth. The project was approved by President Nixon in 1970, given the codename Project Azorian, and handed to John Parangosky. He was a senior CIA program manager who had worked on the U-2 program and understood the gap between what engineers called impossible and what became achievable when enough money and skilled people were focused on a single problem. He wasn't visible in any public account of this period. That was precisely the qualification that mattered. His assessment, delivered without drama, was that the operation was technically feasible. That judgment was what kept the project alive through 4 years of skepticism, oversight, and construction. A ship holding position over a fixed underwater point for weeks would attract attention. The CIA built a cover story around deep-sea manganese module mining, genuine enough as a commercial concept that it held up to routine scrutiny. They needed a sponsor whose public reputation for eccentric ventures would make even an unusual deep ocean project seem plausible. Howard Hughes had not appeared in public since 1970. He ran his business empire through intermediaries from hotel suites that changed without announcement. His companies had existing relationships with defense contractors and government agencies. His name on a secretive deep-sea project would raise no eyebrows worth worrying about. The CIA approached him through intermediaries. The arrangement was made. What the cover required was not just the engineering of a ship, but the engineering of a public reality sustained across 4 years and hundreds of people in plain sight. What does it cost to build a lie that large? The CIA had operational answers and no interest in any other kind. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was built at Sun Shipbuilding in Chester, Pennsylvania between 1971 and 1973. It was 189 meters long and displaced 50,000 tons. The moon pool, the internal chamber through which the lifting system would deploy, was described publicly as a mining equipment bay. The heavy derrick, rated for loads no legitimate mining operation would require, was presented as an experimental extraction rig. The capture vehicle was built separately by Lockheed's Advanced Development Projects facility, the same division that produced the U-2 and SR-71. Known internally as Clementine, it weighed several hundred tons and had to grip 2,700 tons of submarine at 5,000 meters in zero visibility, guided only by acoustic transponders. It had to work first time. There was no second attempt designed into the plan. Parangosky oversaw it all. The shipyard, the Lockheed facility, the cover infrastructure, the compartmentalization of hundreds of contractors who each knew only their portion. In June 1974, the ship left for the Pacific. The Glomar Explorer arrived at the target coordinates and positioned itself above the wreck using a dynamic positioning system that held the 50,000-ton vessel within a few meters of a fixed point using only acoustic transponders and computer-controlled thrusters. This was not standard equipment in 1974. Several weeks in, a Soviet naval auxiliary vessel called the Chazma appeared and began circling. A helicopter made low passes over the American ship, crew members photographing the deck. The The CIA personnel did not go below or cover anything. Unusual behavior damages a cover faster than the thing being covered. The radio exchanges were unremarkable. The Chajma eventually left. No indication was ever found that the Soviets understood what they had been looking at. The pipe string, 600 sections of 9-meter steel pipe assembled one at a time through the moon pool, descended over several days. When Clementine reached the ocean floor, operators tracked it through sonar returns and transponder data, maneuvering its arms around a hull partially buried in sediment with no visual confirmation. The arms closed. A secure hold was reported. Parangaski, by the accounts of those present, allowed himself something close to relief. The process of bringing it up began. For several days, the lift proceeded normally. Each pipe section uncoupled and stacked on deck as the K129 rose slowly from the sea floor. Then, at 2,000 meters, the load readings changed. The fracture propagated through a structural member carrying a disproportionate share of the weight. 2 claw arms released. The forward section fell. What does it mean to come that close? 4 years of construction, 6 years since the wreck, and the thing they had extended the limits of engineering to reach fell back into the dark at 2,000 meters. The instruments recorded it. The crew understood what the numbers meant without anyone needing to explain it. The aft section, roughly 12 meters of hull, was still held. They brought it up. The CIA confirmed that the recovered section contained no ballistic missile components, no warheads, no cryptographic equipment. Those were all in the forward section, now back on the ocean floor. 2 non-nuclear torpedo casings were found. Whether this is the complete account remains unclear. The operational records are still largely classified. Some former officials have suggested additional material was recovered. Others maintain the claw failure ended any meaningful intelligence gain. The truth is not available from any public source. What was later confirmed through declassification is that 6 Soviet soldiers were found in the wreckage. Parangaski, who had built the operation from a set of photographs and a set of engineering problems, now had to decide what to do with them. The 6 men were given a formal burial at sea, American officers in dress uniform. Both the American and Soviet flags were present. The names of the 6 men were read aloud in Russian. The ceremony followed the same protocol that would have been observed for American sailors lost in comparable conditions. It was filmed by the CIA. The decision to conduct it with that level of formality was not operationally required. It was human judgment made inside a covert program about how to treat men who died in service of an adversary, and whose families had been told nothing specific for 6 years. The footage was classified and remained so for 18 years. In 1992, Director of Central Intelligence Robert Gates authorized a copy to be given to Boris Yeltsin as part of an effort to build trust between the two governments. The families of the 6 men who had been told only that their husbands and sons had died at sea received it through Russian authorities. For most of them, it was the first evidence of what had happened at the end. The footage runs a few minutes. It is formal and quiet. In June 1974, while the ship was still on station, thieves broke into the Hughes Summa Corporation offices in Los Angeles looking for cash. Among the documents they removed were files referencing Project Azorian. By late 1974, the story had reached journalists. The CIA spent months persuading editors to hold it. In February 1975, the Los Angeles Times published. Within weeks, it was everywhere. The CIA's formal response was 6 words: "We can neither confirm nor deny." The phrase had been used before, but the Azorian case gave it a specific legal character that has remained in practice ever since. A Freedom of Information request seeking records an agency refuses to acknowledge possessing is still called a Glomar request. The second mission was cancelled. Parangoski retired. The program was over. The K129 is still on the floor of the Pacific at approximately 4,900 meters. The coordinates are known to the United States government and remain classified. The forward section, the part that fell at 2,000 meters in July 1974, has not been approached since. The 3 ballistic missiles may still be in their launch tubes. The cryptographic equipment may still be in the communication spaces. After more than 50 years at that depth, the physical state of the wreck is a matter of speculation. 92 of the crew remain aboard. 6 were recovered and buried at sea with some ceremony. The rest went down in March 1968 and have not been disturbed. What was actually learned from those 12 recovered meters has never been fully accounted for publicly. The CIA's official position is that the intelligence value was limited given what was lost when the claw fractured. Some former officials have suggested this understates what was found. Independent researchers have raised the same possibility. Without the full operational records, there is no way to evaluate those claims. The documents exist somewhere. They have not been released. What does it mean, in the end, that this operation happened at all? That a government built a ship under a dying billionaire's name, told the world it was going mining, sent it to the bottom of the Pacific to raise a weapon from a country it had never formally fought? The question doesn't have a clear answer. Perhaps that is appropriate. The Cold War was not a story with clean answers. It was a story about 2 powers doing the things they did in the dark for reasons that were rational inside the logic they had built and difficult to explain outside it. John Parangoski died in 2004. He didn't write a memoir, he didn't give interviews. The details of what he knew, what was actually in those 12 meters of hull, what he made of the decade he spent building something the world was not supposed to know existed, went with him. Project Azorian cost somewhere between $350 and $500 million, required a purpose-built ship, a lifting system with no precedent, a reclusive billionaire's name on the hull, and 4 years of deception maintained in plain sight. It recovered 1/3 of what it went for. The mission that was supposed to follow it was never mounted. The forward section of the K129 is still down there, right where it landed when the claw broke. 50 years of cold water and silence, and coordinates in a file somewhere still marked classified. Nobody went back.